The new remnant. Hello. If you have not watched my previous devotion entitled God is Always Faithful, please first go and watch that and then come back to this one, okay? That way you will better understand this video. We have been studying in chapter 11 of Romans. Let's look. But what is God's reply to him? I have kept for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. God, he saved 7,000 men who had not gone astray from him. They were his people. All of them were Jews. At that time, a long time ago, that Paul is talking about, in the Old Testament time, there were no Gentiles who were born into God's family. Again, the men born from back then, those 7,000, were from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They had been faithful to the Lord and remained so. Paul, now he is going to speak for himself and not quote from the Old Testament. God is speaking through him still. So too, at the present time, there is a remnant chosen by grace. Paul, he is talking about right then, at the time of his writing this letter to the Romans, there is a remnant that belongs to God. So too, at the present time, there is a remnant chosen by grace. God's remnant that Paul is speaking about now is different than the kind of remnant in the Old Testament. They are not the same from the Old Testament. Those people were Jewish and they followed the Mosaic law. Now, they didn't receive salvation from that. They received salvation from faith in God. But now the people that Paul are talking about during the New Testament times are a remnant chosen by God also. But did they get this by following a law? No, they're under the new covenant. They are faithful to the Lord, and God chose them. The reason he chose them is because of grace. So too, at the present time, there is a remnant chosen by grace. Question: did God see these people doing good works, obeying him, and choose him? No. It's grace. Finish. God's grace. Let's look at the next verse. But if it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. Paul, he is saying very clearly, this remnant of God's chosen people is because of his grace. That means that there's no connection with the Mosaic law or anything that they are doing. If God had chosen these people based on something they did, then grace would mean nothing. Grace is a gift from God that we do not earn. There is nothing that a person can do to earn grace. There's nothing involved in grace. We can't work and cause grace to happen. No. The reason that there is a remnant of people is because they had faith in Jesus Christ, that he died on the cross, was buried, and ascended to heaven, where he now sits enthroned. Having faith in Jesus as the Creator, the Lord, and our Savior. Through grace, our God is always faithful to his people, always. Coram Deo. To live coram Deo is to live one's entire life in the presence of God, under the authority of God, to the glory of God.